There's a moment every entrepreneur hits. You're working harder than you ever have. The calendar is packed, but the inbox feels endless. That to-do list never gets shorter, and somehow the business still isn't growing the way that it should be. But the problem isn't effort. The problem is leverage. Welcome to the Leverage Podcast. I'm your host, Jon Davidson, and every week I'm sitting down with founders and top performers who have found that lever. The hire, the system, that mindset shift that changed everything. This show is for the business owner who's ready to stop being the bottleneck and start being the architect. Let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Leverage Podcast. Boy, when you talk about being the bottleneck and desiring to be the architect of your business, I've got the man for you today. Joining me is business systems expert Clive Morrison Jr. Clive, thank you for joining me on the show today. I'm really excited to share all you've learned throughout your career and how you're helping entrepreneurs and founders really work on their business and get out of that rut of being the order taker, being the operator, and really becoming a true CEO and founder. Thank you for joining me. Where are you joining me from this afternoon?
I'm here from Atlanta, Georgia.
Wonderful. How are we feeling about the Falcons this year? I think we've got some changes. Are we optimistic? Are we trying to make it through the year? How are we feeling?
I'm actually a native New Yorker, so I love the New York Giants. I'm actually a Giants fan, right? So
okay.
Can't tell anybody. They're gonna all know it now, but so I'm down here, and I watch the Falcons when there's a game on. I go see them. We're not we're not rivals, so it's not a big deal. But I am a Giants fan, so we're in the same situation as they are too. So it's all right.
Yeah, hey, they look like they're on their way up. They got a new head coach. They got a promising quarterback, and they got a young core there. But we're not here to talk football. We are here to talk business systems. So Clive, first of all, for our audience, help us understand, what is this common problem that you are finding with so many founders and entrepreneurs across businesses, and how are you helping them solve it?
So the main problem, you talk about being a bottleneck and that the business gets stuck with them, is that a lot of them get success by doing all the work. They started out, they hustled harder than anybody in their community. They raised a business, and they got to this point right here where everything was done by them. So they're like, who did this? I did it. Who did the sales? I did. Who did the delivery? I did. So it's hard when you have that success. As you know, the book says, what got you here won't get you there. And so people get stuck in that mindset of nobody else can do it. And I've tried one time. I hired somebody and they came in and they couldn't do it as well as I could. So that keeps them stuck right there at a plateau, whether it's revenue wise. And then we also have that badge of honor, right? I work 16 hours a day. I've done all the work, right? So people also wear that as a badge of honor. I'm the hardest working person here. And I do all the work. So there's a lot of things that go on with the business owners that has them stuck at that plateau, even though they've read the book sometimes about processes or about working on their business. If you ask any entrepreneur, most of them will tell you they've heard that term, working on the business, not in the business. But how to actually get there is where people get stuck. And what we do is we help them go through those processes where it's not just jumping from working in the business to working on the business. There's levels to it, right? Hiring a VA first, or, getting somebody to take on the phone, right? What part of the business can you delegate? You don't just, some people try to do the other thing, what we call abdication. They just delegate everything, right? They just be like, they delegate everything, and then they're on another place. And then when everything is burning, they're like, oh my God. And they jump right back into fixing everything because they haven't done delegation properly. They've done what we call abdication.
Interesting. So yeah, some people, it's the pendulum swings, right? You're doing everything, and then you hear all this news about process and systems, and then so you're not on the business, you're actually out of the business.
Out of the business. Yes.
And so what you're helping people understand is how to really, from the foundation, build layers of these systems. So you're not out of the business, but you're in the proper role that a founder and a CEO should be. I can really relate to this. I had my own consulting business for 6 years, and I was a solopreneur. I did everything myself. I was very cautious about adding costs. Um, I became an entrepreneur without really planning to become one ahead of time due to COVID, and
Yeah.
so the business
Hmm.
ran quite well for a while. But what I'm saying is I can relate to being this founder who does everything themselves and is maybe a little cautious about what I am going to do because I don't know what I don't know, right?
Yeah.
At what point in a founder's career are they typically coming to you? The reason I'm asking that is you prefaced a few things. It's the ego, right? I do this myself. I'm a grinder. I'm a hustler. That can last for a while, but that burns you out over time, right?
Yep.
There's also the look of, hey, I don't even know I'm supposed to be doing anything different. It's just, like a fish doesn't know it's wet. I don't know that I'm doing too much. And then you probably have people who are aware of the issue, but they just don't know what that first step is.
Mm.
Where are you usually meeting founders, or is it kind of all over the place?
So I usually people, I always say they've been in business for about 5 years or better. And what happens is that they've gotten over that initial place where they're like, hey, I'm not gonna give up the business. I'm still gonna go into it, right? They're frustrated. They've taken some kind of course, they've taken some kind of mastermind. Somebody has come, they maybe hired a VA, they've tried to get people on, they've gotten out of the mentality of they know they can't do it all themselves. They're like, hey, you know what? I know that, but I've tried these other things and I can't do it all myself. So they've read a book, they've read the E Myth, right? They maybe
Hmm.
read Traction, something like that, right? And somebody's told them about these things. And that's when they meet with me and they're like, oh, and we start talking about processes and I start talking about all the things that they've already tried and why they work. Because they'll be like, I tried this and I tried that. Oh, I heard that systems things before. It doesn't work for me. And I said,
Yeah.
you're not a special snowflake. Your business it's just processes. We haven't mapped it out, and you're trying to hire before you mapped out the position. Now, I do say there are some fundamental things that people don't do in their business first because they don't understand their margins. So when they come into their business, even people who try to hire right away, they hire out of their own out of bad margins, right? So they've been doing all the work and they've been pricing the work themselves. So
Hmm.
it looks profitable because you're doing the work, but it doesn't become profitable when you hire somebody to do the work, right? So you're like,
Yeah, my business is a nonprofit on accident.
on accident, right?
Yeah.
You'll be surprised how many clients they have, that especially when people are doing larger number of clients, that they have clients that are not profitable, right? Where they
Yeah.
have clients that they're not making money on when they look at all the time and energy they spent on it, and they're like, oh, because most people don't niche down. Most people are serving a lot of people. They're doing a lot of delivery, and entrepreneurs are talented people. That's how they got into business, right? Somebody referred them. Somebody said, hey, you know what you're doing. Can you help me with this? But there's much more to business than just being able to do a service. And that's where we get into the weeds. Because like we started out with a cleaning business and we do residential. And with my cleaning business, the first thing I learning these things was that we had to say, hey, no to a lot of different businesses. People like, can you organize our house? Can you do carpet cleaning? And every service that we added on was a new documentation, was new SOPs, was a new service line, was a new way to price it. And then to combine it with the cleaning, the people on the phone had to say, now they had to upsell them and they had to know how to combine the services, the discounts. So there was a lot that went on when I understood, okay, there's to do this, you have to simplify the business, which other people don't understand, in order to even bring it on to people, because that the complexity also hurts the business.
That's a great point where, you've got a solopreneur or an entrepreneur who is in charge of everything, touching everything. The business oftentimes exists in their head,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so the way they are, the systems, which aren't really systems at that point, typically are not what makes an efficient business that is repeatable, but it's the preference of the founder of how they like to do stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so let's take that that service business you mentioned, that cleaning
Clean.
business. Okay, I prefer to let's say if we're cleaning carpets, I like to do it this way for just out of personal preference. And then something else, I don't know, if we're like reorganizing a garage or something.
Yeah.
Okay, well I do, but there's no continuity. There's no consistency between the processes and no one else can repeat it because it's just this is how I figured out how to get the job done.
And a lot of times when you have multiple services, you're not doing those services every day, right? So what happens is that you took those carpet cleaning, garage organizing, right? Organize somebody's room. So what happens every time you show up, so even with cleaning, and I'm going to give you these examples, you show up to any of those services. When you show up to those services, what happens is that you're figuring it out right now. You're like, oh, I see this house, I see this room. I'm gonna do it like this. I'm gonna have this way right here. Then you go to the garage, the same thing. Because even in cleaning services, just the cleaning, forget about all the other services. We have a detailed process of how we have to question the customer to make sure we're not over cleaning. A easy example is you go to somebody's home and do you charge for clutter or not? They have a whole bunch of stuff on their kids' toys on their floor. Do you charge for that or not? So we ask that question. But you as a solo cleaner, you would know how to deal with that when you get there, right? So you're not asking a lot of those questions to be clarified because you have to we're having information being passed from the person on the phone who's taking it from SOP documentation, who's passing it on to a cleaner, who's taking it from the customer. So by the time that the cleaner gets there, it has to be very precise. Or what happens is there's a lot of confusion and the customer's like, hey, I thought you guys were going to do this. And I thought you were going to do that. And it's like, oh, well, we this is what we do. There's no detailed checklist. There's nothing passed off a service agreement. So all of those things that are detailed that are in there that you have to actually do is what's going to allow you to have a great service to the client that's delivered by somebody else besides yourself.
That's very well explained. Thank you for that. Question for you for the founders who are trying to develop systems, right? So you've recognized the pain point of I can't be doing everything.
Yep.
You take the step towards action of, okay, I know I need systems and I'm going to start implementing systems. What are some of the most common mistakes that you're seeing from founders who are trying to implement systems, but because they're not working with an expert like yourself, they don't really know what they're doing?
The first thing, they don't know their numbers. And right, they don't know their numbers at all. That's and numbers are of course you have your just bookkeeping numbers where your revenue, profit, those are basic numbers, but we're talking about even the KPIs of your client acquisition process and then your delivery process, right? So they don't know their numbers in each one of those, so they don't know margins to be able to do that. That would be number one. That's everything we start with any business. We're like, hey, we need to know your numbers. So people have goals in their business, and I always say, no. First thing you want to do is track activity. Right? You're not even tracking activity. You're trying to say, hey, I want to make 100,000 this year. I said, but how much are you making per month? And you don't know that. All right, I want to get 100 leads. What is that? How many leads are you getting right now? What are we comparing that to? Do you get 10 leads? Where are they coming from? So we always talk about, before we even talk about goals, we say, hey, let's track activity. Are you tracking what you're actually doing? And then tracking what you're doing as a founder. How do you spend your days? What do you spend your days most on? That's the next thing. Documenting what you do and what you can get out of. So it's like, all right, I'm handling all the phone calls, I'm handling marketing. And then you're able to say to yourself, what do I want to get out of first that I want to hand off? Then we take one piece of that, of wherever you say, this says phone calls, we have to go through a detailed process of getting that person off. So if you want to hire a VA, if that you say, hey, to get on the phone, go through their entire process of what you would be giving them, what would be their exact duties, because we know how to do it and we can improvise and we know it. We think that an employee comes here, but that's why they're an employee. They want a specific set of rules to work within between their hours of employment and go home.
Right. That's right. Yeah. Their passion is not to build this business. It's I got to pay my bills. And the way society works is I need a job to do that.
I need a job to do
this one because you hired me to do it.
Because you hired me to do it, right? There's are things you can, you want to look for people who would like doing it, because I always tell people there's always a job that'll pay $1 more, So you still want to create an environment. That's a whole nother thing, but you still want to create an environment where people want to work at, because there's always going to be a job that'll pay $1 more and somebody will
That's
go to
right.
that, right? So you can't
Yeah.
just compete on the pricing.
That's well said. Now, I hear you. So we're getting to know, we're understanding our numbers. We're tracking our margins, then we're tracking our activities. Before we get to the goals, to have context for the goals,
Mm-hmm.
we're tracking the founder, even though he might say, "Hey, no, I'm the founder. You didn't need to track my activity." It's like that's why you're not profitable, because you're
That's why you're
not
not
giving
profitable. Yeah.
yourself an hourly rate.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then what I heard you say is, what do I hand off? So now, not every founder accurately understands what they should hand off, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there are things that a founder should do. There are things that any founder might enjoy doing that they should
Yeah.
do, or maybe they shouldn't be doing. How do you
Mm-hmm.
help founders identify, hey, you're the CEO, you're the founder, these are the specific tasks that justify your time in action?
Well, you want to be able to first say, hey, what is going on in the business that only I can do, right? You may be the face of the business. You may be the person that's doing if you're doing the marketing, the podcast, whatever it is that you're doing, you're the only person that can do right now. Is that you want to start handing off all those other things to other people. So that's how you're doing the audit. It's not just the audit of the time, it's like the audit of impact, right? Where's the impact being happened hey, I can't give up sales right now, even though I could bring somebody in, but the impact may be too big for me to give that up first, right?
Yeah,
So you're doing both. You're looking at the time that it takes, and also the impact on the business that it is.
that's a great point. Now, I also understand that sometimes an issue in a business is beyond the system, is having the wrong person in a
In the
specific
wrong
role.
seat. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
How often are you coming across situations where, hey, you've got a team and you're delegating, but it's where people are sitting on the bus that's the
Man,
problem?
that is that is when I go into places where that has a team already, a lot of time I was just discussing with somebody, and a lot of time teams self-select to leave out, right? And they a lot of founders, because they love their team, don't want to fire their team members, right?
Right.
And a lot of times the team members just quit. You know what I'm saying?
Ah,
Because you coming in with SOPs and documentation, and we have to follow. And they were winging it before, right? They were getting by,
mm,
and they had all this tribal knowledge, they and that is also, with the tribal knowledge also comes security. If I'm the front desk person, or I'm your assistant or whatever, and I have all this tribal knowledge and you're sucking it out of me, right? I'm
now
believing
I'm
that you're going to
replaceable.
replace me. Yes, right? Exactly. But
Very interesting. I can completely relate as a former employee, times where I was gatekeeping this knowledge.
mhm.
It's yeah, it's you feel like it's job security and pride that, like,
Yes.
I know this thing that no one else can do. The client likes it this way, and so I do this, and I'm the one who knows that because this is my role and I'm good at
Mhm.
what I do. It's threatening when you add a little accountability and you add some standard processes to that.
You start realizing that other people can do your job. But what happens is that there's what I try to explain to employees, though, is that what you're actually doing is that there's still a foundational level of knowledge that needs to happen, right?
Hmm.
Yes. Do we want to make sure that if you leave tomorrow that we're safe? Yes, but it's still going to be a transition, because there's still things that you can't SOP out, that you can't workflow out, right? That there's just nuances to the business that the vibe of working with people, interacting with people. There's still things that
Yeah.
that people are not gonna that somebody's not just gonna switch you over. But that's the biggest fear that I see people have, is they come in and the employees will think that, hey, we're not doing it. And so you have that, and then you have employees who, just like I said, just don't want to adopt. They don't want to adopt the standard process. They were great with winging it. They would come in, but they held the owners hostage. They would come in when they want
Mm.
to. They would say they would call out, and you'd be like, oh, you have to let them go. That's what the rules say. Oh yeah, but I don't want to. And a lot of owners don't want to go through the pain of what it would take. But when we rip the band-aid off, and when they rip the band-aid off is a lot of times from the employee, they'll leave. I can name numerous instances where the employee left and you started realizing, oh, we can survive without them. Was it a little bit harder? Yes, but what it forced us to do was to put something in place to make sure, one, it didn't happen again, that we were just so left out of place because they left with a lot of information or they left with a lot of knowledge, things that we didn't have documented. Where's the access code at? Who has his password? How do we get inside of here? Right? And then you're like, so you realize that now you start saying we have to have these documentations in different places.
Yeah, I appreciate you explaining that. That makes a lot of sense. Well, next, I want to get into some more tangible details about how do we actually implement some of this stuff. But before we do that, let's listen to a message from our sponsor, Sphere Rocket.
Business owners and entrepreneurs will place a proven executive assistant VA for just $4 to $8 an hour, and if they don't perform, you don't pay. Imagine freeing up 20 plus hours a week by someone handling your most time-consuming tasks like admin work, managing emails, scheduling meetings, and so much more. This one hire could transform your productivity and give you back the time you need to focus on growing your business. At Sphere Rocket VA, we make this possible in as little as 7 days. We'll place a proven executive assistant VA in your business for just $4 to $8 an hour, and your VA will take over day-to-day administrative tasks, help manage your email and calendar, follow up with past clients, giving you back 20 plus hours a week so you can increase your sales and even enjoy more personal time. And here's the best part. If they don't give you back 20 plus hours a week in the first month, you don't pay Sphere Rocket a dime. We've done this for thousands of business owners, and now it's your turn to see the results. Click the link around this video to schedule a demo and discover how this one hire can completely change how you run your business. Remember, if within 45 days the VA doesn't perform, you don't pay.
All right, we are here once again with Clive Morrison Jr., and he is sharing his expertise on building business systems, which is really goes to the theme of this podcast, helping founders avoid being the bottleneck and becoming the architect of their business. Clive, thank you again for joining me. I want to get into some nitty-gritty how-to. And so, of course, step one would be connecting with you and hiring you to help with this. But in this example, give me the first three things. I know you went a little over, okay, we get to know the numbers and track the activity and these things. But if I want to take these steps to put a system in place and I don't yet have one, what are the first things that I can do that are going to cause an impact?
We have ChatGPT, you have Claude, you have all these things. I would just brain dump all the things in your business, and I would start with the marketing, sales, client delivery. Right. And so I would just take and put all these things in there. If you just do that and say, hey, make me a map of my business from there, you could get a lot done with that. Right. Then, so let's break that down. Marketing. What is actually marketing? Right. How do people find out about my business? Right. Because when people say marketing, it's a vague term, but it's actually, how do people find out about my business? Is it, depending on your business, this podcast, right? People, a commercial as we just went through, right? This is how, those are marketing tactics. Then from the marketing, we're going to line out. I always take from marketing to sales. So the marketing part of it, which is how do people find out my business and how do I get those people to get into my sales process? And we just say they become a lead some kind of way, right? So in the industry jargon, they'll say, hey, this is a lead. Somebody who's giving you their contact information, whether they've called you, whether they submitted a form, right? Text you, some kind of way that you have their information. Now, each one of those, you have to be, this is where that's a lot because you want to be precise in these. You want to say, hey, how do people actually contact me? I would just take one process to begin with so you can practice the process. Right, which is take one channel. Hey, people find me on YouTube. That's how, I run a YouTube video and that's how I put up YouTube. Okay, what's the link in my description? What do I want people to do from YouTube? I want them to click my link, right? And on my link, that takes them to a landing page. And from that landing page, they can submit a form to be able to to either get more information or book a call, right? Let's say book a call. Once they book that call, then they get on my calendar. They book that call, they're on my calendar. Once they're on my calendar, we have a date where we show up and then when they show up, then we have the call, and then I sell them. Correct?
Right.
So that would be everything that I would dump out of my head. I'm just using the vague process that
Step by step by step by step
Mhm.
of each process.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of each process, right? And you can just ask ChatGPT to question you with that. You can take this, what I just said, and you can just ask ChatGPT to question you on your process. Then we talk about the delivery part of it, right? Is that what happens after I sell somebody something? Okay. So after I sell them something, what email do I send out to them? Right. And I'm going to name some things, but when you go to ChatGPT, it'll give you an even deeper stepping of the process. It'll explain all of these things. So for your business, whatever your business is. So what email do they get when they come in, when they purchase? After they get that email, what date do we start the service? Is it a recurring service or is it a one-time service? What days that first thing happens? You dump all of that out there, and ChatGPT will keep asking you these questions to get you tighter on it. And then you can say, hey, once you do all of that, say, hey, is there any questions that you have for me that I've missed in building out this process? That's the first thing, building out the process. All right. So that's number one. Once we build out the process, then from there, then you want to start tracking the activity of the process. How many YouTube videos do I post? I post one YouTube video, right? That's my activity, right? How many people clicked on the link, right? That's what I'm tracking. How many people clicked on the link? How many people actually came to my landing page, right? How many people converted? All right, the numbers. Let me go back. I'm sorry about that. We do want to track those numbers, but I want to go back to what I was saying about the processes. I skipped the whole step. Just number one, doing the process, what we call the perfect way of doing the process. What I described was somebody did everything perfectly, right? Everything happened perfectly. They came to your YouTube video. Once they came to your YouTube video, they clicked on the link. Once they clicked on the link, they scheduled an appointment. They showed up for the call and they bought, right? That's perfect. Next, what we want to start doing is the detours. What happens when they don't do what we want them to do? So once we get their information, they clicked on the link. Now, if you have a retargeting software, you can say, hey, they didn't click on the link. We want to retarget them with that. That's more sophisticated technique.
Let me pause you right there. I think your microphone, all of a sudden your audio is a little bit low there.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's perfect. All right.
Okay, all right.
Keep going.
All right. So what we were saying is that we were saying the detours of the process. First, you have the perfect steps, right? You want to measure out if everything happens perfectly in what we call the customer journey. Then after everything happens perfectly, what happens on the detour? What happens if they don't take the actions that you want them to take? So if they come to your landing page and they don't click on, and they don't fill out your form, you hit them with a retargeting ad. If they fill out your form, but they don't schedule a call, right? They don't schedule a call. You follow up with emails or a text message or a call, whatever the detour is. Then for each step of those process, you ask for the detour. If they schedule a call, but they don't show up for the call, what do we do? How do we get them back onto the call? And then finally the exit, right? What happens if we've done all the reach outs, we've retargeted them, we've sent them follow-up emails, they didn't do the next action. What takes them out of our list or puts them on a long-term nurture list, right? So that's what we talk about when we talk about the client acquisition, client delivery, and just getting all of those out of your head so we can know what happens on how we do client acquisition, which is marketing and sales, and how we do client delivery. So we want to make sure that we know everything goes perfect, if there's a detour, and the exit.
And I bet that's just initially super valuable for the founders because they're probably thinking through stuff at a much deeper level than they've ever thought before. I know a lot of operator founders are just, it's all in their head and it's do. But, especially, these plan B, C, D, if they don't do this, what's happening? If they don't do this, what's happening? All of a sudden you find out you're probably leaving a lot of money on the table and you realize the lack of repeatability of your current business.
Of your current business. What it's going to
So,
question you. Oh, I just wanted to add on there. What's going to question
please.
you with is that you're actually going to start seeing that you don't have the answer to a lot of these questions. You're gonna be like, they're gonna be like, oh, so what do you do if he doesn't show up on the call? I don't know. You know, I don't. You're gonna have a lot of people. They didn't do anything with these things before, so they had a
Right.
pile of leads just sitting there, and they've never even thought through what would happen in this situation. So because most entrepreneurs go after the people that buy right now. Somebody called me and they bought, and it's like, oh, okay, you bought. All right, that's all I want to talk to. Somebody call you and say, hey, give me a quote. They give them a quote. Never follow up, never call them again, don't do anything, right? Somebody cancels the service, they don't follow up with them, they never get out to them. Somebody has a great service, they don't reach out and try to get a review from them, right? I'm just giving you all, they don't get a testimonial from them. All the little processes in place in the business that people don't do. You say, hey, a lot of people don't like to give testimonials or give reviews, right? And when I say don't like to, I'm just saying that you'll be like, hey, can I get a review? Like, yeah, the service was great, I'll give you a review. Then they forget, they're doing something else, and we never follow up with that.
Right.
So just going through all of the times where people don't take action. Majority of people are not ready to buy. Majority of people are not ready to give you a review. Majority of people forgot their appointment. Majority of people all through the process, they're not taking action. And we have to be able to say, what are we going to do if they don't take the action at this point?
Yeah. So, okay. So now we've understood every step, the perfect process, the detours. So let's just say I've got that all laid out. I know all my processes and everything. What am I doing next?
Now you're starting to say, hey, who can I start handing these things off to, right? You want to say what, because we're looking at the power stages. So, all right, where am I being stuck at every day? Like, I want to go out here and do the service, right? Say nobody else can do the service. And it's like, I need somebody to take these phone calls, or I have a pile of emails. And this, we talked about the VAs, is that this is where the VAs come in. And I always tell people your first hire should be an assistant, right? And that assistant might do phones, that might do emails. Even with AI, this is funny where people are like, oh, I connect my AI. I said, you're still not checking your emails. It's not like you're not even reading the emails that you're connected to Claude and connected to everything. You're not even reading the email that Claude is sending back to you in the morning time.
So I want to dig into that really quick, because I think that is incredibly interesting, and it's such a common problem with founders nowadays, because we do have access to like the greatest technology of all time in AI. It's absolutely shocking how much it can help us, how we can learn, how we can automate stuff, how we can fast forward a lot of things. But in that same vein, it doesn't mean we're using it correctly. And I feel like AI is probably something that is misused more than just about anything. What are founders typically doing wrong when they discover the magic of AI, but they haven't really followed the processes and built the system in the way that they actually should?
The number one thing, they don't have somebody managing their AI.
Boom.
Because AI it's an employee that has to be managed itself. And
that's
where a great virtual assistant or great assistant period comes in place is that you don't have to do the managing as much. They should be more of that's where the processes and systems come in at. Where the AI is when it breaks down, when it doesn't read context correctly, you don't know when it's hallucinating. You don't know when it's not doing the right thing. You don't know when it's broken, because it's just giving you information. And when your assistant does it, they may be off a little bit, but they're not going to be totally off, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because they're working every day in your business. They know your business. They're a human being. It's not like they're not taking information from the internet and then one day something breaks and then they go to the internet, right? So
that's right.
That's why I say, hey, you still need somebody to manage to manage the AI. And
well, let me give you a quick example, because I love this. I was actually talking to the CEO of our sponsor, Sphere Rocket, the other day, because I was like, hey, what do VAs look like in the world of AI? Right? Now that we have this insane tool at our fingertips, right? And he said, John, let me tell you what the experience every time a CEO asks me this, right? A founder asks me this question. He says, show me how you use AI. Well, I'm going to pull up my app, right? I'm going to put in my prompt. I'm going to receive the information or the feedback back to me. I'm probably going to have to adjust something a little bit, right? And then I'm going to resubmit that, and then I'm going to get it back. And so you might be thinking, well, look, why do you need an assistant? Why do you need a team? And the answer is, who did that work just now?
You did.
You did. And so it can speed some processes up, but it is not a replacement for an assistant or for a great team. Team members and assistants who are trained on AI tools is really that superpower that's going to take that business to the next step. You agree or disagree?
I totally agree. That's where it's in the AI companies, that's in their marketing plan, is to say, hey, you can replace everybody totally. And what I see is anybody who's replaced it totally, they spend hours on AI. They spend hours with their AI. Right. So when people be like, I've replaced my entire, marketing department, I'd be like, but you're a one person, and you and the AI are talking all day. That's not what most founders have going on.
Yeah, that's not the goal. The goal is if you aren't working today, is the business still running, and are you still making money?
That's exact. So I agree with that, but I also tell people the other part is are you able to? Because most people don't want to. It's not. This is what I'm with most business owners. It's not when I say that to them, because I used to always be like, hey, we'll save you all. We'll be able to. You'll run some bin without you, right? Most business owners that I've come to find, it's not that they want the business to run without them. They want that the business doesn't break down if they have to leave, if they have to go do something, right? And they don't want the business. They don't want to do all the little stuff. They like selling, or they like marketing, or they whatever it is they like to do, right? They want to, they want to go do. They want to be able to focus on what they love to do, and not be buried in the paperwork, the financials, the KPIs, right? They don't want to. That's what they don't want to do. I have to wrestle founders down to give them a report about their numbers. Like, yo, let's go over the numbers. Oh, yeah, we'll get to that. Like, no, it's very important. Don't worry, we've compiled everything. They don't want to fill out any forms. They don't want to submit anything. Your VA is able to come to you and ask you, and be able to go into your systems and get the numbers they need, because a lot of the data that founders have is inside of their systems. And so the VA is able to go in and get those numbers, so that you're not compiling reports. You're not doing all these things.
That's very well said. I could talk to you forever, Clive, and I think we go back and forth for a very long time here. But unfortunately, we're rounding this first interview out. Is there anything that we missed in this process? We talked about, identifying the issue. We talked about the various steps and, kind of a self-audit or business audit, if you will, building those processes, and then how do we implement those with a team? What else are we missing to complete this conversation on building business systems?
I would say that not missing, but I just want to give the overview, because we were ending with AI. And I say that you want to make sure that you have your workflows, SOPs, work instructions, checklists, all that documented, and then go to AI. Because before you can even give it to your teammates, right? That needs to be given to your teammates also, right? But it's the same thing, because the AI is an employee also. So just saying that is the framework that we use here, is to be able to say, hey, what is the workflow, which is, how do we do this? And then in each part of the workflow, the SOP, what do we do, right? So it's like, workflow is what do we do? The SOP is how do we do it, each step. Yeah. And then the work instructions is the actual detail of saying, hey, to click this button, push this here, right? And do that. And make sure that we have that documentation with everybody, and then inputting that and going to AI. That would be all.
Yep. And then from there, we figure out, hey, what can be automated? And what needs the human touch, right?
And also what needs to be eliminated.
And what needs to be eliminated. Probably most important.
Simplify your business. They always say this: one offer, one sales process, one delivery process. And I always tell people, it's not the marketing. It's easier when you're starting out because everybody's a customer, but it's harder when you want to scale, right? When you start out, everybody you meet is a customer. Everybody, because I can clean your house. I can fix your AI. I can do your business because I'm smart enough to figure it out. I'll spend 30 hours to figure out. We had to stop and we had to see, because every new business, we had to figure out their entire business process. And right. So people don't understand that. And now it's like, hey, how do I get to the point where I'm just like, you know what? It's very simplified. I've eliminated most of this stuff. I have one service, because then your team will only have one service to deliver, and then you don't have to try to teach them 1,000 different things.
Yeah. Yeah. Simplifying that business is a huge key to being able to scale. Well, Clive, final question for you. For those who are listening and they're like, boy, this guy knows his stuff. I feel stuck. I hear what he's saying, but, I could really use his help of, documenting these processes, getting started, getting my team figured out, etc. How can folks get in touch with you to do business together?
They can just go to our website, CMJ Business Solutions. And so, and I'm just being like, we have a wait list, really, right? We don't take on everybody, because we only take on a few projects a month, only because the intensity of what we do and the depth of what we do. So we have a small team in there, and with the expertise that we have, so we don't take on many people. But yes, and also I document all this on my YouTube channel, which is Clive Morrison, for CMJ Business Solutions. And you can find all of the videos on there where I go in depth on each one of these things.
Fantastic. I definitely recommend listeners and viewers checking out that YouTube channel and get on that wait list if you need some help to get out of that rut and start working on your business rather than in your business. Clive Morrison Jr., thank you again for joining me today on the Leverage Podcast.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.